is they have to decide as far as who they want to play every day. Do they want to go the defense and speed route of Luis Angel Acuna, or do they want to go the potentially more offense route with Brett Baty?
Today on MetCast, I'm joined by Joe DeMayo of SNY, and we're going to break down everything about the New York Mets. What's going on with Jeff McNeil in the second base position battle? Who's going to be potentially the fifth starter? What's going on with our current pitching prospects and so much more next on MetCast. What's going on, Met fans? Today, I'm joined by Joe DeMayo of SNY and co-host of the Mets Pod. Joe, thanks so much for giving some of your time to us.
Anytime. How's it going?
It's going good. Listen, we got a lot of news coming out of spring training. Obviously, the injuries are probably the biggest perspective for Mets fans. What's going on out there with the Frankie Montas, the Sean Manaea? But lately, today, we get the news of Jeff McNeil probably going to be out for a full month. So that position battle for that final spot is pretty much two spots. So who do you see getting the upper hand of possibly starting at second base, and who's going to get those last two spots?
If Jeff McNeil is going to miss a month, that is a month from now, not a month from when the season starts. So theoretically, if he is within that timeline, which I know, as Carlos Mendoza said, obliques can be a little tricky. So you're not really 100% sure on the timeline. But if it's a month, he's really going to miss like less than 2 weeks of the regular season. So I think maybe things are being made a little bigger than they are with the situation for second base. But what it comes down to is they have to decide as far as who they want to play every day. Do they want to go the defense and speed route of Luis Angel Acuna, or do they want to go the potentially more offense route with Brett Baty? There's a lot of buzz around Brett Baty getting that opportunity, and Carlos Mendoza has openly said, we're going to give him more and more reps at second base. And to me, that sounds like a guy they want to give the opportunity to, but I don't think Acuna will go down quietly. And otherwise, I think the second spot that was previously just one spot, I would lean one of the non-roster guys, someone like a Donovan Walton or someone like a Luis De Los Santos. I don't think it's the right move to carry both Brett Baty and Luis Angel Acuna.
Could you see that because they want to get Acuna full-time at bats, potentially down at AAA? You don't want to leave a guy that's young, potentially sitting on the bench if Brett Baty's going to get the start at second.
For sure. That's what I think. I want Acuna getting every day at bat. So if he's going to be the second baseman up with the big league team, cool. Let's roll with it and let him play. But if he's going to be the backup / platoon partner of Brett Baty's, then that's not what I want. As good as Acuna was in that 9-game stretch when Francisco Lindor went down. And to be clear, the Mets don't make the playoffs if Acuna doesn't come up and do what he did in that time. His year in AAA left a lot to be desired. The statistics weren't too good, and the batted ball data underneath wasn't overly exciting either. So to me, I want Acuna getting every day at bats, whether that's at the big league level or the AAA level.
I agree with you. Now, I want to move on to some of the pitching concerns that a lot of Met fans have raised, especially today. We heard Carlos Mendoza talk about Edwin Diaz and not too concerned about his velocity. But as a Mets fan, let's be honest, Joe, when you see your closer out there who's used to throwing 99, 100 miles an hour, throwing 92 to 96, for me, that is extremely concerning, especially considering Edwin Diaz is not a pitcher where he's dotting the corners. He's trying to blow you away and then get you leaning on that slider. Are you concerned?
I certainly don't like hearing 92. I'm hopeful it was like a StatCast error and it was like a 92 mile an hour slider, which is a much more reasonable thing for Diaz. But if he's 95, 96 at this point in time, that's not overly concerning. I mean, coming off the knee last year, you weren't seeing the 100 and 101s really out of Diaz. So I think he might be more of a mid to upper 90s guy, but I will certainly be paying mind to his next time out because I do not want to see 92 mile an hour fastballs. That is where my radar will perk up a little bit if that becomes more of a thing.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I want to get to one other person that I think has a shot to make the bullpen. And I've been a big fan of him. And no, not only because he interacts with us over on X, but Max Kranick, who has been steadily at 96 this spring, blowing guys away. His secondary stuff looks pretty good. Looks like he's come in much to improve, a little more polished this year. Could you see him potentially getting that last bullpen spot and contributing in this pen?
I don't know how you keep Max Kranick off this roster. I mean, last year he came into the season, he was a starting pitcher with AAA Syracuse. It didn't really go so well, to the point the Mets designated him for assignment off the 40-man roster. Nobody claimed him, and he just came back and stayed off the roster. And the Mets added him towards the end of the season. He actually made there's a wild card series, I think, or a DS, one of the playoff series. He made the roster. So that definitely opened some eyes. And in the second half with Syracuse, they moved him to the bullpen, and things started to look a little better. And now, just as you mentioned, the stuff is unbelievably good. The fastball is pretty special. It'll get up to 97, 98. He's got a sweeper. He's got a gyro slider. You saw a cutter is something he's playing with too. So I think Kranick has a chance to be an absolute weapon out of this bullpen. And he's a guy that can be used maybe in a similar light that they used Jose Butto last year, where it was he's available for 40 to 45 pitches if you need him to in a given outing. So I think that'll be the benefit of him coming from starter into a reliever. But another thing I get tweeted about it all the time, because I don't call it X. It is Twitter to me forever. But I get tweeted that, why aren't they putting him in the rotation? The rotation's a problem. He wasn't very good as a starter. He's awesome as a reliever. Let's just let him do what he's awesome at.
Right, and some guys are like that. Buddha was like that. Buddha feels comfortable more in the bullpen, right? I'm pretty sure there was an interview where he was asked, do you want to be a starter? And he kind of shied away from it.
Yeah, I mean, I think ultimately, if you look at a lot of the top relievers in the sport and you just go on their baseball reference page and click show non-major or show minors, you will see a lot of them were starters in the minor leagues. Most relievers are essentially failed starters. So, Kranick, I think, as I said, I think he has a chance to be an absolute weapon, and I can't make any kind of justification to keep him off the opening day roster.
Now, I want to pivot a little bit to some of the hot topic pitchers coming up out of the minor leagues. And it's so refreshing as a Mets fan, because it feels like we haven't had a top 10 in our own prospect rankings of pitchers in forever. And now we probably have three between Jonah Tung, Noah McLean, and Brandon Sproat. And let's be honest, I was there for Brandon Sproat's start in the spring. He was throwing hot and heavy. I was right behind home plate. His fastball clearly has that life that you're looking for. But I want to talk about Nolan McLean and what he did yesterday. You saw that lively fastball and that secondary slider. It looks like it's breaking 6 or 7 inches. What do you see the output for both of them this season? Could we see both of them potentially make their major league debuts in 2025?
I fully expect that we will see Brandon Sproat in 2025. And if he can get off to a better start with AAA Syracuse, I think, and we talked to Andy Green on the Mets pod, who's the Mets senior vice president of player development. And the way he painted it, it was like, Brandon Sproat, we told him that he dominated Brooklyn, he dominated Binghamton, then it was a struggle at Syracuse. And he kind of looked at that as a positive, believe it or not, where it's like, you're going to face some type of adversity in professional baseball at some point, and you really don't want that first level of adversity to be at the major league level. You want it to happen in the minors. So Sproat certainly struggled some at the AAA level, but if he goes and he performs, as you said, fastball, touches triple digits, sits in the mid 90s, I would like to see him focus more on the sinker than the four seam. I think the four seam should be his secondary fastball. The shape on it is not ideal, but if you're throwing 100, shape can be outweighed a little bit. But the sinker, I think, is a good pitch. He's got a sweeper. His changeup is an excellent secondary offering. If he could kind of put the package together of just refining some of his stuff and fixing command within the confines of the strike zone, I think he has a chance to be a number 3, number 2 type of starter. And Nolan McLean, who I put number 3 in the Mets system in my latest top 30 that you can read over at sny.tv, he's special in a lot of ways. There's very few people that know how to manipulate a baseball the way Nolan McLean can. As you mentioned, that little highlight that the Mets player development Twitter account posted, his sweeper is the best pitch in the Mets system. It's a 70 grade pitch. He can get over 3,000 RPMs on it. He has a gyro slider. He's working on a cutter. He's got a changeup, a little curveball. The fastball is a good pitch. And I think what will be advantageous for him is this year is going to be the first year in his entire life that he is only pitching. He has been a two-way player all growing up, through college, even into professional baseball. And he bailed on hitting, I think it was June of 24. So now this is his first year just on pitching. And also 2024 was his first time as a starting pitcher because he was a college reliever. So it was like a triple transition for this guy who is, hyper athletic on the mound. I think the ceiling is way up here on him. Like if you told me Noel McLean was the number one prospect in the Mets system by the end of the year, I wouldn't be shocked at all. And if goes back to Double-A Binghamton, does his thing and makes his way to Triple-A, I don't think it's out of the question at all that by the end of the season we could see him in Queens.
That is awesome to hear. Very exciting. I mean, you from the draft pick when we drafted him, and now you see guys like Carson Beige, another two-way guy who's going to be more as an outfielder. Now, my last question to you, and my most exciting thing entering the season, and I put this out there, and maybe it's a little bit of a homer take for me, but I personally think with his stuff, Klay Holmes could potentially be an all-star this year. I think it just plays up as a starter. A lot of organizations thought of him as a starter. The New York Yankees haven't, but David Stearns, who finds a guy, it seems like every single year, whether it's the Sean Manaeas, Luis Severinos, he turns these guys into plus pitchers. What do you think Klay Holmes' ceiling is in 2025? What are your expectations?
If you listen to the Mets pod, I've been on the Klay Holmes thing from the day they signed him, and I fought all the wars online of everyone just saying he needs to go to the bullpen. What I was most impressed with in regards to Holmes is that he went down to Port St. Lucie in the middle of January to start his buildup. And, his first time out, you see a lot of these pitchers, their first outing, they go an inning. They maybe go two if they were light on pitches in that one inning. Holmes went 3 his first time out. So he's been building up for some time, and he is physically built to be a starting pitcher. When we were down there and we were in the clubhouse during media time, and he walked by, and I knew what he looked like, but Connor Rogers, my co-host on the Mets pod, taps me on the shoulder. He goes, "Who the heck is that?" I was like, "That's Klay Holmes. He's 6'6", 255 pounds. Like, he is built to take on the innings. The only question that I have is, will he be able to stay healthy throughout the season? And that's something we'll only be able to know as we move forward. But from a stuff standpoint, the sinker is one of the best sinkers in all of baseball. He's got a sweeper. He's got the gyro slider. He brought in the kick change, which what is really impressive about him is he's willing to sample different grips and different things. And they figured out that kick change relatively quickly as an option for him. And it looks like it could be a plus offering. So I don't know about, will he make an all-star team or anything like that? But I think Klay Holmes is going to be an impactful starting pitcher. And a lot of people that questioned him will have a little egg on their face when we talk again next year.
All right, Joe, thanks so much for joining us. Guys, if you enjoy this content, make sure you smash that like button, hit that subscribe so you never miss any of our guests that we have on here. Next week, we have Mike Puma of the New York Post, who's going to be joining us. Joe, thanks so much for giving us some of your time. And I look forward to more and more podcasts between you and Connor, probably the best Mets podcast I personally watch on YouTube. Thanks so much for joining us.
Appreciate it. And hey, everybody out there, if you're listening to this Sunday, March 16th, the spring breakout game will be on SNY. And I will be with Steve Gelbs and Jim Duquette on the call live on SNY. So make sure you check that out. We talked about a couple prospects there. They're not on the spring breakout roster when it comes to Sproat and McLean, but come and check out a lot of the Mets top prospects live Sunday. So really excited for that too.
Thanks, everybody.